No pulse, no pressure, Dr. Harrison called out, his voice cutting through the chaos of the trauma bay. We've done everything we can. Call it. Maya Chen's blood-soaked gloves paused over the young pilot's chest. 43 bullet holes? 43 reasons he should be dead. The monitors screamed their flatline warnings while the overhead lights buzzed with fluorescent indifference. No, Maya said quietly. Not yet. Her hands moved before her mind could stop them, reaching for the scalpel that would either save a life or destroy her career forever. The third consecutive night of understaffing at St. Mary's Emergency Department had Maya running on coffee and determination. At 11:47 p.m., she moved through her rounds with the quiet efficiency that had earned her respect over 5 years of emergency nursing. The familiar scent of antiseptic mixed with floor wax filled her nostrils as she checked on Mrs. Rodriguez in bed 7. "How's the pain, Mrs. Rodriguez?" Maya asked, adjusting the elderly woman's pillow. The woman had fallen down her apartment stairs, breaking her hip in 3 places. "Better when you're here, mija," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered, her weathered hand finding Maya's. "You have gentle hands." Maya smiled, checking the morphine drip. Her father had always said the same thing when she was young, watching her bandage his military training injuries. Gentle hands, but a steel spine when it matters. Those words felt prophetic now as she made her way to the nurse's station. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Can't wait to marry you in 3 months. Love watching you save lives every day." She smiled, tucking the phone away. Everything was finally falling into place. The wedding, their small apartment, even her student loans were almost paid off. Maya had chosen the chaos of emergency medicine over the predictable safety of other hospital units, and it was paying off. Dr. Harrison appeared beside her, reviewing charts. "Chen, what would we do without you?" he said, not looking up from a patient file. "Third night this week, you've kept us running smooth." "Just doing my job, Doc." But even as she said it, Maya felt the familiar electric tension that preceded a busy night. The kind of night where everything could change in an instant. Thunder rumbled outside. The emergency radio crackled with increased activity. Dr. Harrison's expression tightened after taking a phone call. "Storm's getting worse," he muttered. "EMS is reporting multiple accidents on the interstate." Maya glanced at the weather report on the break room TV. Severe thunderstorms expected through the morning. She'd seen what storms could do to people. Car accidents, falls, heart attacks from stress. Her stomach tightened. At 12:23 a.m., the power flickered briefly. Maya was starting an IV on an elderly patient with pneumonia when the emergency radio mentioned something that made her pause. "Aircraft in distress. Military transport requesting emergency landing clearance." She finished the IV insertion with practiced precision, but her mind wandered to her father's stories about his Air Force days. The brotherhood of people who put their lives on the line for others. She'd chosen medicine as her way of serving. Maya had no idea that in 24 minutes, that choice would cost her everything. "Incoming trauma!" The emergency coordinator burst through the double doors at 12:47 a.m., her face pale under the harsh lights. "Military aircraft down, pilot critical, ETA 4 minutes." Maya's heart rate spiked, but her hands remained steady. 5 years of emergency medicine had trained her for this moment. She ran through trauma protocols in her mind while heading to the trauma bay. "What do we know?" Dr. Harrison asked, pulling on fresh gloves. 26-year-old male, multiple gunshot wounds to torso. Blood pressure dropping rapidly. That's all we have. Multiple gunshot wounds. Maya's mind raced. They were a level 2 trauma center, equipped for stabilization and transfer, not major trauma surgery. But depending on the severity, they might not have a choice. The trauma bay hummed with controlled chaos. Maya checked equipment. Monitors, crash cart, blood products, suction devices. Everything had to be perfect. In 4 minutes, someone's life would be in their hands. "Remember," Dr. Harrison said, meeting each team member's eyes, "we stabilize and transfer. We're not equipped for major surgery here." Maya nodded, but something cold settled in her stomach. What if stabilization wasn't enough? The doors exploded open. 26-year-old male, multiple GSWs to chest and abdomen, the paramedic shouted over the sound of squeaking wheels. Blood pressure 70/40 and falling. Lost consciousness en route. Maya got her first look at the patient and felt her breath catch. He couldn't be much older than she was, someone's son, someone's brother, maybe someone's fiancé. But it was the wounds that made her hands tremble for just a moment. Bullet holes peppered his flight suit from chest to abdomen. Too many to count quickly. Way too many for someone to survive. Jesus, Dr. Harrison whispered. How is he still alive? Maya was already moving, cutting away the blood-soaked flight suit, while Dr. Harrison began his assessment. The pilot's face was pale but peaceful, like he was simply sleeping. His dog tags read, Rodriguez J. Blood pressure dropping, Maya called out, watching the monitors. 60/30? She started 2 large-bore IVs while Dr. Harrison worked to assess the damage, but Maya could see what he was seeing. This wasn't just multiple gunshot wounds. This was destruction. Systematic, deliberate, devastating. How many? Dr. Harrison asked. Maya began counting entry wounds, her voice steady despite the horror. Chest, 15, 16, 17. Abdomen, God, there's more, 28, 29. She kept counting, 35, 40, 43, 43 bullet wounds. That's impossible, Dr. Harrison said. Nobody survives 43 gunshot wounds. But the monitor showed a weak, thready pulse. Somehow, impossibly, James Rodriguez was still fighting. We need to get him to County General, Dr. Harrison said. They have trauma surgery capabilities. Maya looked at the blood pressure reading. Doc, he's not going to make it 20 minutes to County General. Then we do what we can and pray. But Maya was already seeing the signs. The subtle changes in color that meant shock was progressing. The breathing pattern that meant internal bleeding was overwhelming his system. She'd seen enough trauma cases to know James Rodriguez had maybe 10 minutes left. Blood pressure 40/20, she announced. Dr. Harrison's face went pale. Type and cross for 6 units. Get surgery on the phone. They're scrubbed in on an emergency appendectomy, the clerk called back. 20 minutes minimum. Maya felt time slowing down. 20 minutes was forever. 20 minutes was too late. Doc, she said quietly, we have to do something now. We don't have surgical capabilities for this level of trauma. Hospital policy is going to let him die. The monitors began their warning chimes. Blood pressure dropping further, heart rate becoming irregular. Maya looked at James Rodriguez's peaceful face and thought about her father's words. Sometimes doing right means breaking the rules, Maya. But always be prepared for the consequences. No pulse! The monitors flatlined. Starting CPR, Maya announced, placing her hands on his chest. Chen, stop, Dr. Harrison said. We've done everything we can. Call it? Maya's hands paused. Everything she'd worked for hung in the balance. Her career, her wedding, her future. All of it balanced against one impossible choice. No, she said. Not yet. Maya's hands moved before her mind could stop them. She reached for the scalpel, knowing that what she was about to do would change everything. Chen, what are you doing? Dr. Harrison demanded. Emergency thoracotomy, Maya said, her voice steady despite the chaos. He's got internal bleeding we can't see. If I can find the source... You're not a surgeon. You can't... I can, and I will. Maya made the first incision, her hands remembering every medical textbook she'd ever read, every trauma case she'd observed. He's not dying on my watch. Dr. Harrison stood frozen for a moment. Then Maya heard him moving behind her. Get me suction and irrigation. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. The administrator appeared in the doorway. What's going on here, Dr. Harrison? You're not authorized for trauma surgery. Emergency circumstances, Dr. Harrison replied, not looking up. I'm calling security, the administrator said. This is a massive liability. Then call them, Maya said, not pausing in her work. She'd found the first bullet, lodged near the heart. But this man is not dying because of your liability concerns. Her hands worked with surgical precision, years of emergency training guiding her movements. The bullet came free and she could see blood flow improving immediately. There, she whispered. One down. But there were 42 more. Security appeared in the doorway, but Dr. Harrison stepped between them and Maya. Give us 5 minutes, he said. Please. Maya worked faster than she'd ever worked in her life. Each bullet removal was a small victory, each improvement in vital signs a reason to continue. Her back ached from bending over the table. Sweat dripped down her face despite the air conditioning. 27, she announced, dropping another bullet into the metal pan with a small clink. 28. Maya, Dr. Harrison said quietly, his blood pressure is coming up. She allowed herself a moment of hope. Keep the fluids running. I'm almost there. The administrator returned with hospital security and what looked like legal counsel. Nurse Chen, you need to stop immediately. You're performing surgery without a license. This is criminal. Maya looked up, her face streaked with sweat and determination. You want to arrest me for saving a life? Go ahead. But you'll have to wait until I'm finished. She turned back to her work. 35, 38, 41. 2 more, she whispered. The last 2 bullets were the deepest, requiring her to work carefully around major vessels. One wrong move could undo everything she'd accomplished. Steady hands, she whispered to herself, echoing her father's words. 42, 43. The metal pan held 43 bullets. 43 pieces of metal that should have been death sentences. Maya stepped back, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. The monitor showed strong, steady vital signs. Blood pressure was normalizing. The impossible had happened. James Rodriguez was alive. Dr. Harrison stared at the monitors in amazement. I've never seen anything like this. Maya, I just threw away my career, Maya said quietly, pulling off her bloody gloves. The administrator stepped forward with security. Nurse Chen, you're suspended immediately pending investigation. Badge and access credentials, please. Maya unclipped her badge, the one from her smiling photo 5 years ago when everything was simpler. She handed it over without a word. Security will escort you from the premises, the administrator continued. You'll be hearing from our legal department. As Maya was led away, she heard Dr. Harrison calling out, Patient is stable for transport. Get County General on the line. She'd done it. James Rodriguez would live. Now she had to figure out how to survive what came next. Maya's phone was ringing when she got home at 6:30 a.m. David's name appeared on the screen, but she couldn't find the words to explain what had happened. She let it go to voicemail. Her apartment felt strange in the morning light. Everything was exactly as she'd left it 12 hours ago, but she felt like a different person entirely. The wedding dress hanging in the closet seemed to mock her. The stack of medical textbooks on her desk looked like evidence of a life that no longer existed. She sat at her kitchen table and stared at her hands. The same hands that had saved James Rodriguez now seemed foreign to her. What had she done? By 9 a.m., her phone was buzzing constantly. David calling, her mother calling. Unknown numbers that were probably reporters. She turned it off. At 10 a.m., someone knocked on her door. Maya looked through the peephole to see a woman in a business suit holding a briefcase. Miss Chen, I'm Sarah Martinez from the State Nursing Board. We need to discuss last night's incident. Maya opened the door, feeling like she was walking to her own execution. The next 2 hours were a blur of accusations and legal terminology. Multiple violations of hospital protocol. Practicing medicine without a license. Criminal charges possible. License under review. I saved his life, Maya said repeatedly. That's not the point, Ms. Martinez replied. You broke fundamental rules that exist for patient safety. After the nursing board investigator left, Maya finally listened to her voicemails. David sounded confused and worried. Her mother was frantic, but the last message made her blood run cold. Ms. Chen, this is Patricia Williams from Channel 7 News. We'd like to get your side of the story about the unauthorized surgery you performed last night. The hospital is calling it a dangerous breach of protocol that put the patient at risk. We're going live at 6. Maya turned on the TV and felt her world collapse further. The hospital had called a press conference. St. Mary's Hospital takes patient safety extremely seriously, the administrator was saying into a cluster of microphones. Last night's unauthorized surgical procedure was performed by a nurse without proper credentials or oversight. While we're grateful the patient survived, we cannot condone actions that circumvent established safety protocols. The reporter's voiceover continued. Sources say the nurse ignored direct orders from supervising physicians and performed surgery she wasn't qualified to do. The patient is currently stable at County General Hospital, but questions remain about whether proper protocols could have achieved the same result without the risk. Maya turned off the TV. They were painting her as reckless, dangerous, a loose cannon who had gotten lucky. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Just saw the news. What were you thinking? Call me. She couldn't call him. How could she explain that sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking all the rules? The next few days passed in a haze of legal meetings and media scrutiny. Maya hired a lawyer she couldn't afford with money she didn't have. The hospital's legal team was painting her as an unstable employee who had violated patient trust and safety protocols. The problem, her lawyer explained, is that you performed surgery without a license. Regardless of the outcome, that's a felony in this state. Maya stared out the window of the law office. So, saving his life was a crime? In the eyes of the law? Potentially, yes. The state nursing board suspended her license pending a full investigation. Word spread quickly through the medical community. Maya was blacklisted from every hospital in the region. 5 years of impeccable service meant nothing compared to one night of breaking rules. David came by the apartment 3 days after the incident. Maya could see the doubt in his eyes before he said a word. Maya, I've been thinking about what happened, he began, not quite meeting her eyes. And? Maybe you should have waited for the surgeons. Maybe there was another way. Maya felt something break inside her. He would have died, David. I counted his heartbeats. I watched his blood pressure drop. He had maybe 5 minutes left. But you don't know that for sure, and now... God, Maya, they're talking about criminal charges. My parents are saying we should postpone the wedding. Your parents? They're worried about my career. If you're convicted of a felony... Stop. Maya held up her hand. Just stop? David left the engagement ring on her kitchen counter. Maya spent the next week alone, reviewing every medical decision she'd made that night. She read hospital policy manuals until her eyes burned. Had she really broken that many rules? Was there another way she could have saved James Rodriguez without destroying her own life? The doubt ate at her. Social media was merciless. Half the comments called her a hero, the other half called her a reckless criminal who had gotten lucky. The uncertainty was torture. She tried calling County General to check on James Rodriguez's condition, but they wouldn't give her information. Patient privacy laws that she'd once respected now felt like walls keeping her from knowing if her sacrifice had even mattered. A week after the incident, Maya sat in her apartment with an eviction notice. Without income, she couldn't make rent. Her savings were gone, spent on legal fees. She hadn't eaten a full meal in 3 days. Her phone rang. It was her mother. Mija, come home, her mother pleaded. Come back to Phoenix. You can start over here. I'm not running away, Mom. You're not running. You're being smart. That man you saved, has he even said thank you? Has anyone from his family reached out? Maya realized they hadn't. Radio silence from the Rodriguez family. No word about his condition. No acknowledgement that she'd risked everything for him. Maybe I was wrong, Maya whispered. Maybe David was right. Maybe there was another way. For the first time since the incident, Maya let herself cry. 8 days after the worst night of her life, Maya sat in her kitchen, staring at a bowl of cereal she couldn't afford and didn't want to eat. The coffee had gone cold hours ago. Her phone had been disconnected for non-payment. The news droned on the small TV in her living room. Something about military operations overseas. Maya wasn't really listening. She was thinking about applying for jobs outside healthcare. Maybe retail, maybe food service. Anything to pay rent. At 11:47 a.m., exactly 8 days and 12 hours after she'd first seen James Rodriguez, Maya heard something that made her look up from her cereal. It sounded like helicopters, but different. Deeper. More mechanical. Maya walked to her kitchen window and looked out at the small field behind her apartment complex. The sound was getting louder, more distinct. Not helicopters. Jet engines. She stepped outside onto her small balcony, shading her eyes against the morning sun. Other residents were coming out of their apartments, pointing at the sky. A sleek private jet was circling the neighborhood, low enough that Maya could see the military markings on its wings. "What the hell?" her neighbor Ms. Patterson muttered. "That thing's gonna land right here." Maya watched in disbelief as the jet lined up with the empty field behind her building. There was no runway, just grass and dirt, but the pilot brought the aircraft down with military precision. As the engines wound down, black SUVs appeared from seemingly nowhere, pulling up to the edge of the field. Men in military dress uniforms got out, their movements crisp and purposeful. Maya's heart began racing for reasons she couldn't explain. One of the uniformed men approached the cluster of apartment buildings, scanning the addresses. He was heading directly toward Maya's building. "Ma'am," he called up to her, "are you Nurse Maya Chen?" Maya's voice caught in her throat. "Yes." "Ma'am, we need to speak with you. Could you come down, please?" Maya's hands trembled as she walked down the stairs. Mrs. Patterson and a dozen other neighbors followed at a respectful distance, their phones out, recording everything. The man who approached her wore the uniform of a U.S. Army general. His chest was decorated with ribbons Maya didn't recognize, but their sheer number suggested a career of distinguished service. "Ms. Chen," he said, his voice carrying the authority of command, "I'm General Patricia Morrison. We need to talk." "I think you have the wrong person," Maya said weakly. "No, ma'am, we don't." The general's expression was serious but kind. "8 days ago, you performed emergency surgery on Captain James Rodriguez. Is that correct?" Maya nodded, confused. "Ma'am, Captain Rodriguez was returning from a classified mission when his aircraft was shot down. His survival is critical to ongoing operations that I cannot discuss in detail." Maya felt the world tilting around her. "Classified mission?" "Yes, ma'am. Captain Rodriguez is a Tier 1 Special Operations Officer. His team had just completed a hostage rescue operation that saved the lives of 17 American civilians being held by enemy forces." The general paused, letting that information sink in. "Ma'am, the intelligence that Captain Rodriguez was carrying, intelligence that he was able to deliver because you saved his life, has since prevented a terrorist attack that would have killed hundreds of people." Maya's legs felt weak. "Hundreds?" "Yes, ma'am. Your decision to operate on Captain Rodriguez, despite the personal and professional risks, has had consequences that extend far beyond what you could have imagined." More vehicles were arriving. Maya could see news vans in the distance, their satellite dishes extended. "Ma'am," General Morrison continued, "Captain Rodriguez specifically requested that we come here today. He wanted to thank you personally, but he's still recovering, so he sent us instead." A second officer approached, carrying a wooden box. "By order of the President of the United States," he announced formally, "Nurse Maya Chen is hereby awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom for extraordinary service to the nation in the preservation of American lives." Maya stared at the medal in the wooden box. It seemed impossible. 8 days ago, she was a suspended nurse facing criminal charges. Now the U.S. military was awarding her the nation's highest civilian honor. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Ma'am," General Morrison said gently, "you saved the life of one of our finest operators. In doing so, you saved the lives of hundreds of innocent people. We don't forget our own, and we don't forget those who save our own." Maya looked around at the crowd that had gathered. Neighbors, reporters, strangers drawn by the spectacle of a military jet landing in suburban Kansas. "The hospital said I was reckless," Maya said. "They said I broke protocols that exist for patient safety." General Morrison's expression hardened. "Ma'am, with respect, the hospital doesn't understand what you accomplished. Sometimes the right thing to do isn't the same as the safe thing to do. Captain Rodriguez is alive because you had the courage to act when action was needed." "What happens now?" Maya asked. "Now, ma'am, you have some choices to make." Within hours, Maya's story had gone from local controversy to national news. The footage of the military jet landing in her backyard played on every major network. The narrative changed overnight. "Hero nurse saves special operations pilot, prevents terrorist attack," read the CNN headline. "Nurse fired for saving American hero," announced Fox News. St. Mary's Hospital called an emergency board meeting. The administrator who had suspended Maya suddenly became unavailable for comment. the hospital's legal team began discussing settlement options. Maya's phone, reconnected within hours by sympathetic phone company employees who'd seen the news, rang constantly. Interview requests, job offers, marriage proposals from strangers who'd seen her story. She ignored most of them, but she did answer when Dr. Harrison called. "Maya," he said, and she could hear the emotion in his voice. "I owe you an apology. We all do." "You supported me in the OR," Maya replied. "That took courage." "Not as much courage as you showed. The hospital wants to reinstate you immediately. Full back pay, promotion to head of trauma nursing, whatever you want." Maya looked around her small apartment. The eviction notice was still taped to her door, but 3 different property management companies had already called to offer her better places to live, rent-free. "Thanks, Dr. Harrison, but I think my time at St. Mary's is over." That afternoon, General Morrison returned with a different offer. "Ms. Chen, I've been authorized to offer you a position with the Military Medical Corps. We need trauma nurses with your skills and judgment. The pay is better than civilian hospitals, the benefits are excellent, and you'd be working with people who understand the difference between following rules and doing what's right." Maya thought about it. A fresh start. A place where her decision to save James Rodriguez would be seen as heroism, not recklessness. "What about my nursing license? The state board is still investigating." "Ma'am, I've been told that investigation is being dropped. Something about national security considerations taking precedence over state licensing concerns." That evening, Maya got a call she'd been hoping for. "Ms. Chen, this is Captain James Rodriguez." His voice was weak but steady. Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Captain Rodriguez, how are you feeling?" "Like I've been shot 43 times, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "But alive, thanks to you." "I'm glad you're okay." "Ms. Chen, I want you to know, the mission my team completed, the intelligence we gathered, it prevented something terrible. Because you saved my life, hundreds of innocent people are safe today." Maya closed her eyes. "I just did my job." "No, ma'am, you did more than your job. You risked everything for someone you'd never met. That's not medicine. That's heroism." They talked for 20 minutes. James told her about the hostage rescue mission, about the terrorist plot they'd uncovered, about his recovery process. He was young, only 26, but he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd seen combat and lived to tell about it. "There's something else," James said before they hung up. "My sister is getting married next month. She wanted me to ask, would you be her maid of honor?" Maya laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd had in over a week. "I don't even know your sister." She says any woman brave enough to save her brother's life is family. The wedding's in Colorado. All expenses paid, of course. "Captain Rodriguez, James. And before you say no, there's someone else who wants to meet you. My fiancée. She's been wanting to thank the woman who saved her future husband." Maya felt her eyes filling with tears. "You're engaged?" "As of yesterday. Funny how almost dying makes you realize what's important." She said yes from my hospital bed. After they hung up, Maya sat in her kitchen holding the phone and crying. Not from sadness this time, but from overwhelming relief. It had been worth it. Every consequence, every moment of doubt, every price she'd paid, it had all been worth it. David had left 3 voicemails since the news broke, each one more apologetic than the last. Maya deleted them without listening to the details. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. But for the first time in 8 days, Maya felt at peace with her choices. 6 months later, Maya stood in the trauma bay at Walter Reed Military Medical Center, teaching a group of young nurses the finer points of emergency surgery. "Sometimes," she told them, "the textbook answer isn't the right answer. Sometimes you have to trust your training, your instincts, and your commitment to preserving life above all else." One of the students raised her hand. "But what about liability? What about following protocols?" Maya smiled. "Protocols exist for good reasons. They protect patients and providers, but occasionally, very occasionally, you'll face a situation where following protocol means someone dies. In those moments, you have to be prepared to make a hard choice." How do you know when that moment comes? Another student asked. You'll know, Maya said. And when it comes, you'll have to live with whatever choice you make. Make sure it's one you can live with. After class, Maya walked through the corridors of Walter Reed, her new uniform crisp and professional. The military had been everything General Morrison promised: challenging work, respectful colleagues, and an environment where decisive action was valued over careful bureaucracy. She'd also found something she hadn't expected: love. Dr. Michael Torres was a trauma surgeon who'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan before joining the Walter Reed staff. He understood the weight of life and death decisions. He understood why Maya had risked everything for a stranger. "Marry me," he'd said the week before, not with flowers or fanfare, but quietly, after they'd successfully saved a young soldier's life together. Maya had said yes without hesitation. Her phone buzzed with a text from James Rodriguez. "Just graduated from physical therapy. Back to full duty next month. Still owe you dinner." James had become like a brother to her. His sister's wedding had been beautiful, and Maya had indeed served as maid of honor. The experience of being welcomed into a family because of her actions that night had healed something in Maya that she hadn't realized was broken. St. Mary's Hospital had undergone significant changes since Maya's story went national. The administrator who'd suspended her had resigned. New protocols were implemented, giving nurses more autonomy in emergency situations. Medical schools across the country now taught case studies based on Maya's decision, debating the ethics of following protocol versus saving lives. They called it the Maya Chen Protocol, guidelines for healthcare workers facing impossible choices between rules and results. Maya's nursing license had been not only restored, but endorsed by the state board as an example of exceptional emergency care. She'd received job offers from hospitals across the country, speaking engagement requests, and even a book deal. She'd turned down most of them. The attention felt strange after a career spent quietly saving lives in the background. As Maya walked to her car after her shift, she thought about that night 8 months ago. The night that had cost her everything and given her everything back, transformed. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Maya Chen?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes." "Miss Chen, my name is Sarah Williams. My son was in a car accident last week. The emergency room nurse who treated him, she said she'd heard your story. She said it inspired her to take risks to save lives." Maya waited. "Miss Chen, she performed a procedure she wasn't technically qualified for. It saved my son's life. I wanted you to know that your courage is still saving people." After Sarah hung up, Maya sat in her car in the Walter Reed parking lot and smiled. The ripples were still spreading. Her decision to save James Rodriguez had created waves that were touching lives she'd never meet. She thought about her father, who'd passed away 2 years earlier. He'd always said that doing the right thing was rarely the easy thing. He'd been right. Maya started her car and drove home to Michael, to her new life built on the foundation of one impossible night when she'd chosen to save a life instead of follow rules. She'd lost everything that night and found herself. Maya stood before a packed auditorium at Johns Hopkins Medical School, delivering the keynote address at their graduation ceremony. In the front row sat General Morrison, James Rodriguez in his dress uniform, and Michael, who still made her heart race when he smiled. "When I was suspended for saving Captain Rodriguez's life," she told the graduating medical students, "I thought my career was over. I thought I'd made the wrong choice." She paused, looking out at the eager faces of future doctors and nurses. "I was wrong about my career being over, but I wasn't wrong about my choice. In medicine, you'll face moments where the right thing to do isn't the safe thing to do, where following protocol means watching someone die who doesn't have to die." The auditorium was silent. "I can't tell you what choice to make in those moments, but I can tell you this. Whatever choice you make sure it's one that lets you sleep at night. Make sure it's one that honors the oath you took to preserve life above all else." After her speech, Maya was approached by a young nursing student. "Miss Chen," the student said nervously, "I start my emergency rotation next month. What if I face a situation like yours?" Maya smiled, remembering her own nervousness as a new nurse. "Then you'll do what feels right in the moment. Trust your training. Trust your instincts. And remember that sometimes the most important medicine isn't found in any textbook. That evening, Maya and Michael had dinner with James and his fiancée Sarah at a quiet restaurant near Walter Reed. James was fully recovered, back to active duty, still carrying out missions that he couldn't discuss in detail. "I have some news," James announced over dessert. "Sarah and I set a date, June 15th. "That's wonderful," Maya said. "Have you decided where?" "Actually," Sarah said, reaching across the table to take Maya's hand, "we'd like to have it at your house. If that's okay, we want our wedding to be where our family is." Maya felt her eyes fill with tears. The house she and Michael had bought in Maryland had become a gathering place for an unlikely family: a nurse, a surgeon, a special operations soldier, and the teacher he was going to marry. After dinner, as they walked to their cars, James pulled Maya aside. "I got a letter yesterday," he said, "from the family of one of the hostages my team rescued. Their daughter just graduated from nursing school. She said she chose medicine because she heard your story, because she wanted to be someone who saves lives when it matters most." Maya shook her head in amazement. "It never stops, does it? The ripples just keep spreading." "Good ripples," James said. "Lives saved because you were brave enough to save one life." As Maya drove home with Michael, she thought about the path that had led her here. 8 months ago, she'd been a suspended nurse facing criminal charges, alone and doubting every choice she'd made. Now she was training the next generation of military medical personnel. Married to a man who understood her calling and surrounded by a family built on shared values of service and sacrifice. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Miss Chen, I'm a nurse in Detroit. Tonight I saved a life by breaking protocol. I thought of your story and found the courage to act. Thank you for showing us the way." Maya showed the text to Michael. "How many does that make this month?" he asked. 12, Maya said. 12 lives saved by people who found courage in the story of one night when I did what felt right. "Any regrets?" Michael asked. Maya looked at her wedding ring, thought about her work at Walter Reed, remembered the feeling of James Rodriguez's pulse strengthening under her hands. "Not one," she said. The Maya Chen protocol had become more than hospital policy. It had become a reminder that sometimes the most important rules are the ones written on your heart, not in any manual. And in emergency departments across the country, nurses and doctors faced impossible choices with Maya's story in their minds, knowing that sometimes doing the right thing means being willing to lose everything. Most of them would never need to make that choice. But for those who did, they knew they weren't alone. Maya Chen had shown them the way.